Hey guys, welcome to today's Vehicle Visionary. Today we're going to do something that I've only done 4 of as of this time, and that is a Porsche. This is the 2020 version of the Cayenne, and for those of you who might be looking for the 21 model and say, oh man, don't click off the video yet, because essentially that's what this is. There's only one difference between 2020 and 2021, and it is the fact that in 21 you'll see the return of the GTS with a 453 horsepower V8 under the hood. Other than that, it's exactly the same. And one thing I gotta be careful of here in the video is to make sure that I say Porsche and not Porsche. But if I slip, don't roast me over the coals down in the comments, although that actually will get me more views. So maybe you should anyway. Here's a funny little personal story as to why you should likely pronounce the word Porsche correctly. When I was 5 years old, my dad bought a 914. Yes, that's not the highest end by any means. In fact, at the age of 5 when he bought that car, it had, I believe, a 4-speed manual transmission and a four-cylinder engine, not a lot of horsepower. He says it couldn't get out of its own way, but I thought it was cool at that age. But it was kind of the bottom end. But the interesting thing is this. The first time I heard him talk about buying a Porsche, he said he was buying a Porsche. And in my 5-year-old mind, I heard he was buying a Porsche. And I thought to myself, well, wait a second. We already have a porch out on our house. Just look out the front door. And if you're buying a new porch, how are you going to transport it here? Well, eventually I figured out exactly what it was. And obviously Porsches have changed immensely since that time. I don't remember the year of that car. I'll put it on the screen. I believe it was a 78. But I only have one picture, unfortunately. It was a light silver when he first got it. And he painted cars a lot back then, so he painted it the same red that the 944s were back then. He also painted the interior of the rims, the inside, to be black. Basically is what they looked like back then as well. And other than not having the spoiler that was on the 944s back in those days, it pretty much looked like one. It just didn't run like one. But we're going to take a look at this Cayenne and see what some of the interesting features are that you might expect to find. This is something you want to pick up, or maybe you just want to learn about it. One of the other Porsches that I have featured here on the Vehicle Visionary YouTube channel was a 2020 Macan. And there is a big difference between the Macan Hood and the Cayenne Hood. And you'll see that when I open this in just a second if you haven't already noticed what that is or don't already know what that is. One thing I like here is the overall design of the headlights. Basically kind of 4 different areas of light for your daytime running lights. And they're not completely square. I like that shape that Porsche has added here. It just gives it a more racy look in my particular opinion. And if you watch me regularly and as I open the hood here, you're going to notice that it does have the assist right here to help bring the hood up with those struts. I like that a lot. And I like the fact that the hood opens up has a wide opening, we'll say. But what was that difference I was talking about between the Macan Hood and the Cayenne Hood? Well, it's found right here in that you don't have that area that comes all the way around that circles around the headlights basically as part of the hood. And I'm curious to know, what would you rather have, this type of hood or the type of hood that comes on the this is the Cayenne, or on the Macan? That's what happens when you're trying to get between 2 different vehicles and talk about them in the same video. Sometimes you get a little tongue twisted. As far as what's under the hood here, you've got the 3-liter V6. I'll put all of the numbers on the screen right here as to horsepower, torque, which has got an 8-speed automatic transmission that has an interesting feature that happens when you hit the park button that I'll show you on the screen right now. So here's the interesting thing. If you want to drive in manual mode, you can just bump the shifter over to the left. But the interesting thing is you've actually moved it over into manual. When you push park, it automatically goes back over to the right and gets into park. Pretty interesting little feature, I thought, at least. And we'll find out on our test drive later on about how it drives, how it rides, how it accelerates. Obviously, this isn't the most powerful engine available for the Cayenne, but that doesn't mean it's weak. I don't think there's anything that would be considered weak about any modern day Porsches on the market. Now, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but it never fails. I have to mention this, because if I don't, someone's going to ask, Does it have turn signal indicators built into the side view mirrors? Absolutely. At the price point where these start, it better have turn signal indicators built into the side view mirrors, and it most certainly does. And of course, an overall sleek design, panoramic sunroof, and of course you've got that rear roof spoiler right here that not only finishes off a very nice look for the roof line, that is functional, by the way. If you don't know what its function is, as you're driving down the road, it channels air over the rear window, which helps to keep that a little more clean during trips down the road. But of course you do have that rear window wiper if you need it. And of course there are multiple ways to open the rear door here, including the remote. And if you want to know what the remote looks like, here's a picture on your screen so you can see exactly how it looks. Small, compact, also looks very racy in my personal opinion. And I like the fact here that unlike on a lot of other vehicles, you actually don't have to hit anything twice. It's not a big deal. You don't have to hold any buttons down to open this rear door. I'm just going to hit that one time and boom, it automatically opens. And that might seem a little strange, but for me personally, I think that's a really cool feature. You have a cargo cover right here that is retractable. Now, one thing that I have to say is a big plus here. And I get a lot of people in the comments section not complaining to me really, but just complaining about the fact that a lot of modern day vehicles no longer have a spare tire. And while that's used in an effort to save weight, and that means you can help increase gas mileage, probably not a whole lot, at least that's what the car makers want us to believe. Maybe we should do a test on that one day to find out. When you lift up on the floor back here in the rear cargo area, good news. A spare tire is located right here. All the tools to change that, everything you need. And I'll put the numbers on the screen as far as cargo space, towing capacity, all that good stuff. One thing that you might want to know about if you're looking around for, say, the releases for the seats right here, that's actually going to be on the inside. There's not anything here in the rear. Maybe we'll see that come in the future, but of course you do have a fully power rear door right here. And one other thing that I can't help but mention is the 3D effect of Porsche right here on the rear door. That really jumps out at me. I don't know how many people look at that and actually notice that, but I really like the way that looks. Okay guys, let's talk a little bit about the rear seat. And you might wonder, having kind of a sloping roof line, a lot of the time that takes away from headspace here in the back seat. Not the case here, and especially if you're sitting in the rear or the middle of the rear seats right here. If the shade's open for the panoramic sunroof, well, that middle seat passenger is going to have a lot of headspace, but I still have quite a bit here just as I'm sitting right now. The seats are good and comfortable. You do have the controls for the air conditioning back here. Everything's digital. I think that's really pretty cool. Kind of nice how that looks. You've got the controls right there. And the thing I like here is, of course, quad zone climate control, dual zone in the front, dual zone in the rear. Nothing here feels cheap whatsoever. And you've got, they're not really, map pockets like you would see on a lot of vehicles, kind of that net material. I like that. Just everything feels good. Plenty of air conditioning vents. You actually have 4 back here, 2 on the rear of the console, 2 on the pillars right here. But here's something that's interesting. If you have a child seat and you use the latch system right here, you're going to remove these. A lot of people are going to say, I don't know why anyone would even put those in their cars, because you're probably going to lose them. Here's a little tip for you. What do you think those pockets are for right there? Okay, and what about some of the interesting features here in the front seat? I'll give you a good look at everything. And I like the fact that everything here is not cheap. All very high-end materials, things that are going to last. And one thing that's interesting about Porsches, for those who maybe are just learning about a vehicle like this for the first time, you don't have a key, of course, but you also don't have a push button start. So how do you start the vehicle? It's on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. If it was a vehicle in another country where they drove on the other side of the road than what we do here in America, it would obviously be on the right-hand side of the steering wheel, but it's right down here. I'll show you a good picture of exactly where and what that is. Now, that's not removable, but it's just something to reach up and grab onto to start. Porsche probably has a specific reason for that, I would imagine as far as why it's like that. You don't push anything in or anything like that. You just reach down and turn it, which probably has its advantages. Why is it in that location? That is actually racing inspired from events such as the 24 Hours of Le Mans, for example. It was believed by Porsche that it was quicker for the driver to hop inside, and while they were starting the vehicle, they could put the belts on with their right hand, start it with the left, and actually get a time advantage over the competition. And that's racing for you, folks. I used to be a race car driver, and you always look to shave off anything you can, even if it's just a few thousandths of a second, to give yourself an advantage over the competition. As far as the instrument cluster goes, here's what you have. And it's kind of interesting that you have everything here with analog. You can also use the digital speedometer if you want to, and it gives you quite a bit of good information there. Your typical steering wheel mounted controls, all that good stuff. And this model does come with a turn signal here on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. And for those of you especially who live in Northwest Louisiana, you might wonder exactly what is that and why is it here? Well, it's so you can push it into the up position to let people know what you're doing when you're turning to the right or changing lanes to the right, and you push it into the down position, the same thing when you're doing everything to the left-hand side. Now, one thing that's very interesting here that I can't be sarcastic about is this sticker on the left-hand side of the dashboard. You can see what that has on there. See that 150 right there? What that is, it corresponds to the type of tire that is on the vehicle, and basically is telling you, depending on what that tire is, what the performance rating is, that's how fast you can drive your Cayenne with the tires that are on it right now. Very interesting, isn't it? Something that I thought was pretty cool. And of course, I talked about how things work here with the shifter. You've got the ability not only to drive manually, shift the transmission manually with the shifter itself, but you can also use the paddle shifters if you're feeling sporty, and who wouldn't be feeling sporty driving around in a Cayenne? And you might wonder, Tom, exactly what does this particular Cayenne cost? A little over $86,000. And keep in mind, this is a 2020 model. Pricing for 21 is probably about the same. I didn't look for that because this isn't a 21. And something else that I thought was really cool here is the fact, here is typical Porsche for you. A lot of the time, you don't have a dampened grab handle, but if you look at this handle right here that you would use to get in and out if you want to, when you let go of that, it doesn't just slam back to the roof. It's dampened. It actually just kind of slowly goes back up. Not real slow, but slow enough to make a difference and actually, well, kind of have that hint of really great craftsmanship. Don't know that I would call that luxurious necessarily. Maybe it could be, I don't know. And of course, you do have the backup camera. I'll show you a shot of that on the screen. You also have the overhead 360-degree view, and I like the fact that you just have a good clear image right here. And one thing that I like about the screen is that it's very responsive to the touch, pretty much instant. Sometimes when you get into any vehicle whatsoever, sometimes the screen is lagging a bit. Not here. And again, of course, you've got all the controls for the climate control, radio, all that good stuff. You can control things obviously through the infotainment screen like you would expect. But one thing that really sets these Porsches apart, it's not unusual to see by any means, but you've got the clock here, the analog clock, in the center of the dashboard. The one thing that I found that was very interesting about that is the fact that when you turn the vehicle off, you don't want that clock to continue to run. You can think about this. Obviously, over the course of time, if the car sits long enough, that's going to use the battery up. Not in this particular case. It actually stops running, and when you turn the vehicle back on, it resets itself. I actually showed that to the owner earlier, and he didn't even know about that. I thought that was very interesting about how that worked that way. And pretty much everything else you would expect to find here. We're just kind of hitting on some of the interesting high points. But my favorite part, of course, of anything is the test drive. So let's hop out on the road and see how this particular Cayenne handles, accelerates, and drives. Okay, let's get out on the road here for a quick test drive. And this is the first time I have ever driven a Cayenne. We'll just kind of ease into the gas pedal a little bit. This isn't the most powerful engine, but as I get up to higher RPMs, it definitely gets to be moving pretty good. Good thing it has a radar detector. But that's not unusual for a vehicle like this. It's not a small vehicle necessarily. It's got some weight to it, so it's not going to just plant you back in the seat and you won't feel the acceleration the same way you would in, say, a 911 or GT3 RS, something like that, which hopefully we'll get to do one soon that would definitely be a lot of fun to drive. But in the meantime, we'll just talk about my experience here. Of course, with the leather wrapped steering wheel, don't have to talk about anything other than the fact that yes, it's nice and comfortable, and it's just overall very easy to see out of. And I'll give you a quick view in case I didn't do it earlier in the video. I'm just thinking about this at this point, is the fact that of course you have the panoramic sunroof here, and just overall a very nice luxurious interior. The interior materials are good, and I just like the fact that everything feels solid. It feels like it's going to last. It feels high end, we'll say, because sometimes you'll get into some of these vehicles that get into the higher 80s and 90s and even over $100,000, and you'll find some cheap plastic materials here, but I don't think you'll ever find that being the case with one of these Porsches. So we're going to get out on a little bit of a different road. We were on a paved section of the road here. We'll get out in just a second here as soon as the traffic clears. And the idea behind this part of the video is we're on a road that's a little bit less smooth than what we've been on. So let's see how it handles, even though this isn't the worst part of town, but we're trying to save a little bit of time here in the video. Got to say a special thanks to the owner for loaning this to me for the day. That is always a privilege. So as we kind of cruise down the road here, this is a road that I drive on a lot. I don't think I've shown it in my test drive videos before, but definitely a smoother ride experience than what I normally have. And like I tell you, if you watch me regularly, I know you've heard this before, but if you don't, keep this in mind. You're going to get varying opinions on things such as ride quality or acceleration and different things like that. And you've got to keep something in mind. The person who's reviewing the car, who's driving the car in that particular video, consider what they might be used to. What is their daily driver? And that's going to really determine how they view the cars that they review. That doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong or anything like that. It just means based on their experience. If you hopped into the same vehicle, you might say to yourself, well, this isn't so bad. It's not what they said it was in the video. And then again, it might be the other way around. Okay, we don't have our regular situation with cornering here, but we're gonna see how the Cayenne handles just kind of cruising down the road here. Not gonna go too terribly fast because obviously we've got traffic around. There's not a lot of cars around me, but coming in the opposite direction, so I wanna make sure I stay in my lane. But let's just see what we get as far as body roll goes and just the overall experience of handling. We've seen that the ride quality is good, and by the way, the seats are comfortable as well. So yeah, we'll accelerate a little bit through this corner here. A little bit of body roll there, but you know, I'm not going all that fast for one thing, and I'm not used to driving this Macan. If I drove it for a few hours, I probably could eliminate, we'll say, some of that body roll. We got a little bit sharper corner coming up here, so we'll see what the difference might be. But I mean, overall, it's really what you would likely expect if you're experienced with these types of vehicles. It's not going to handle like a 911 or something along those lines, but at the same time, it's still going to have some solid characteristics for handling when compared to some of the competition. Now that was a lot better, even though, you know, I didn't really throw it into the corner real hard, but the body roll was a lot less. In fact, there really wasn't any that time. I was a little bit more smooth on the steering wheel. That has a lot to do with it right there. But overall, I must say that I'm really impressed. Now, real quick, you know, the owner was mentioning to me that the brakes seem kind of sensitive, but like I said earlier in the video, that depends on your regular driving experiences. And since he has multiple vehicles, other vehicles that he owns maybe have a little bit softer brake pedal, so to him it seems sensitive. To me it doesn't. So just something to think about. Now, what is my ultimate point in saying that? Well, if you're looking at buying a vehicle, it's great to watch these videos. I always appreciate you watching my videos, but you really need to get out and do a test drive for yourself, because that's going to be kind of the cure-all, end-all for knowing exactly how things handle. And you can get used to it no matter what. But overall, I must say, I'm very impressed with my first Cayenne experience. And that is a quick tour of the 2020 that could just as well be a 2021 Porsche Cayenne. Hope you enjoyed today's video, guys. Make sure to tell me what you want to see me feature in future videos, and I'll do my best to get my hands on it for you. And as always, I appreciate the opportunity to give you a vision for your next vehicle. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye-bye.